stands a force unbroken, with banners high and hearts awoken. The sound of pipes, our war is calling. Like thunderous waves, our duty is falling. Stand tall, together we fight, with courage found in every breath. We'll fight like lions, defy our death. In unity, our hearts shall sing the legacy of warriors through every reign. With battle cries, we forge our fate. In fields of valor, we elevate. As shadows loom, our spirits gleam. Brothers in arms, we are the dream. Fearless, we take the night, with courage found in every breath. We'll fight like lions, defy our death. In unity, our hearts shall sing the legacy of warriors through every reign. As dawn breaks, we know our name.
What a fitting intro for today's topic, everybody. Thank you for being here. I'm Nighthawk, your host today. Eric is going to be doing something today, so he's going to be busy. We might be able to bring somebody on as a co-host. We'll see how that goes. That being said, I'm going to get into the disclaimer. We're only doing the one disclaimer today because this subject is solely my subject and my opinions, so no copyright issues. Okay, and of course, you know, the music and everything is solely William Nighthawk and Nighthawk I Strange, this podcast channel's property. So that being said, as always, I claim fair use of any and all content under the Copyright Act of 1976. Furthermore, I wish to acknowledge that not all the opinions and theories mentioned during the podcast are not necessarily the opinions or views of Nighthawk I Strange, this podcast channel, or William Nighthawk, except for today. I'm gonna tickle your brains, everybody. I'm gonna pick away at those nerve endings on your brain and really make you concentrate and think this morning. Okay? So, we at Nighthawk I Strange, this YouTube channel and Facebook channels, merely bring the open format to discuss the possibilities of certain topics happening in the past, present, and future. Please join the Nighthawk I Strange, this YouTube channel by subscribing, and please hit that like button and join the chat family. Be respectful, and please put all questions in capital letters, and that's only because I'm half blind. Thank you for everything, and thank you for being here. All right, let me get that off of there. Okay, and say hello to a few people in the chat already. Wow, we already got people piling in. Good. All right, Corey. Michelle, good to see you. Roxanne, good to see you. Wizard Moon, long time. Haven't seen you in here very long. Jonaside, good to see you. Of course, it's always great to have Urso and Tanya in the chat. Okay. And I might even bring Corey on for my co-host if he's willing. So if you're willing, Corey, put something in the chat to tell me. Okay, let's see here. We are going, let me get to my notes here, guys, okay? I know the chat's already flying by. Let's see here. Okay. All right. Here's a question for you guys. Okay, now I told you I was going to pick your brains this morning, all right? Or evening, wherever you're at. What if this whole matrix thing, this whole simulation theory thing, this whole, how I want to say it, reality is nothing but a movie projector going in your mind? They say your brain is a computer, right? What if the Egyptians knew that? Something that we don't. What if the Egyptians, excuse me, what if the Egyptians knew something that we don't? Okay. Think about that question. Okay. And you got to give me time in the chat. Remember, okay, you might have to put your questions in there a couple times before I see it. All right. All capital letters, please. What if they knew that the only way our soul could move on would be to remove the brain? Because the brain is connected to the soul trap of this world, of this realm, I should say. Okay. What if our brain never stops placing a false reality in front of our drive-in movie theater screen eyes long after we're dead? It's been proven. Okay. It has been proven that after this body dies, our brain keeps functioning anywhere from 7 minutes to 7 hours. Okay. What if those 7 minutes or 7 hours was an indefinite period of time? And the brain not noting time scale on humanity's level, 24 hours in a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and so on and so on. What if our brain just sees it as a vast open universe of emptiness and just continues functioning? Told you I'd make you think today. I really, really am interested in this subject because you know what? Some of the stuff that we see and deal with in life as we get older, or we become crippled physically in some way, even Alzheimer's, okay, those types of instances. Sometimes it just, things change drastically. What if those instances were when this body died and that movie projector screen keeps on playing our life out in front of us until our brain is disconnected from our body by a coroner who pumps in certain fluids to basically preserve, if you know what I mean. What if this whole cycle is a soul trap continuation because of our brain being connected to the matrix, because our brain being connected to the simulation and making us think that we're actually continue living? And those nights that when we're really, really cold or really, really restless and can't get to sleep, what if those aren't real? Told you I'd make you think. I'm going to go to the comment section here, and I want to see everybody's questions in capital letters, everybody's thoughts on the subject, because it is definitely that would be wild. Let me see here. Or maybe it's just a possible way of keeping our soul here, keeping it part of this realm. Like how everybody has that theory, Jonaside, of the moon being a soul trap, you know? Well, what if that moon was, say, ancient AI and just merely the pilot for the program? Makes you wonder. Makes you wonder. I'm going to put the link in the chat, okay? And I want to give everybody an opportunity to come on for 15 minutes and talk about their thoughts on that, okay? Their beliefs on what they feel. And I'm not, don't get me wrong, I'm contradicting any religious beliefs out there, okay? See, this is how my brain thinks. I'm always trying to process things in this reality, okay? And it's a very, very good question if you think about it, because the Egyptians, everybody questioned why the Egyptians would shove something up your nose and rip your brain out upon death. What if they knew that that was the connection to break to free us from the soul trap? It's a thought. And it's just a thought. It's just a theory, okay? There's no scientific means to prove that I'm wrong in that. But it is a thought nonetheless. Yeah, that would be wild scary. Morning, Bounty. Hey, David, good to see you. Urso, I want to know what you think about this too, because you and I, when we're in chats, we talk a lot about the old, the spiritual aspect, and Bounty too. Celia, good to see you. Jason, good to see you. I don't see any capital letters yet, but I'm going slow here, guys. So I don't even have my. Tanya. Let's see. Wow, nobody's even questioning that. Yeah, Jason, coffee. Definitely coffee. Here we go. Let me see what Urso has to say. Your desire is used against you being your focus on the prison you don't see around you. Now, that does make sense. But if you think about it too, though, on this scale, Urso, that it could be why there's so many civilizations built upon civilization. Maybe only a certain few ancient civilizations figured it out. I don't know. I'm just curious about that question. I believe that, life is a sacred thing, okay? Energy is a sacred thing, okay? And I'm just one to believe that there might be other ways to manipulate the evil to keep our souls trapped in this reality. Now, here's the other connection too on that whole spectrum of things, trying to bring things together. What if the whole duality thing, the good, the evil, the yin, the yang, you know, um, the dark and the light, what if that was all within us? Okay. Now, some of us do have a duality soul. Some of us do have that ability. Okay. Um, but what if it was all just like a, well, you know how we say politics is a theater? Okay. What if it's the same concept? What if our brain is putting that good and evil out there as part of the function program to trap us within a matrix simulation and not release our soul to the next level of life, the next dimension, the next heavens? And then the other question is, why would there be so many heavens? Why would the literature in the Bibles and most religious beliefs talk about multiple heavens? Because technically, even when you're dealing with Gnostic beliefs, okay, you're dealing with a belief of the plural, and you're dealing with certain beings that are falsifying what they are to keep you here, to keep you from ascending. Okay. What if this whole process and all the religious beliefs, and I mean all of them, are specifically set up and designed for the soul trap? There we go. What is the connection between the soul and the brain? I don't have enough coffee in me to ask. Oh, well, yeah, 11:11. That's weird how that question came up, or that comment came up, Tanya, at 11:11. That's the other aspect of it, okay? And this is why I started, you all know that this is just a way for us to talk about these subjects, okay? But what if all the angelic numbers that we see occasionally are trigger mechanisms to wake us up to from the higher ascended levels? What if the other dimensions, the other levels, are trying to get past the operational skills of our brain to help us ascend? Does that make sense? I mean, if you think about it, I've said that, I've always said, David, you can back me up on this, that you don't think and don't process with this up here. You process with your heart brain. I've always said that your heart is your real brain. Okay. Not your head up here, not what's in your head up here. Okay. That can be fooled. Just take, for instance, the whole, how you can see images and cloud formations and stuff, pareidolia, you know. So, the brain can be misled. Okay. If we think with our heart, we have that connection. And remember, when we do the whole the whole uh, processing of what we perceive as reality, I've always said that you have to go with your heart. Okay, like whenever I tell you you'd go out into the woods, if you're, I don't care if you're hunting bigfoot or hunting deer, you know, put your hand on a tree, take your shoes off, and curl your toes up into the ground, into Mother Earth. Both those directions are the opposite direction from here, from your brain. Think about it. What if that's another way to avoid the simulation process? And these, like I said, these are all just thoughts. Maybe we're each one, but somehow part of a collective being. And that could be true too, like the white and red blood cells of the human body. Exactly. We could be molecules on something greater than we are. It's just that, good morning, Amy. It's just that when we question it, we're labeled either crazy or we're labeled anti-Christian. We're labeled narcissists. We're labeled, just all kinds of labels from people that can't think that there might possibly be more to the reality that we are in. And I basically bring these questions to you guys. So, hey, Unreal. Amy, I put the link in the chat already. I'll put it in periodically throughout the podcast. Boy, Roxanne, you're awful quiet this morning. I'll put it in the chat again, Corey. All right, Corey, the link is in the chat. Ida, good to see you. The link is in the chat, Corey, so come on in. And then we'll bring Amy on if she wants to come on. I know Monisha wanted to talk last Sunday, and I wasn't physically able to do it. Didn't sleep good last night. Could be because you're burning the candle at both ends. Let me see here. Let me see what Bounty has to say too. So far, I believe that we come from the wholeness, but also, there's Corey. Good. All right. But also in what wholeness we individuals are separated off of there, but it's still part of the connection, quantum entanglement. Yeah, and quantum entanglement, that's a subject that a lot of people don't understand. Hey, Corey, good to see you, bro.
Caught me in mid-hit.
Yeah. Hey, I don't know, man. I started thinking about this whole Egyptian connection thing and how it was just fascinating to me about what if they knew something that we didn't? What if they knew that basically, yeah, I mean, I do believe that too, and a lot of our indigenous teachings teach us not to use our brain. It teaches us to use our heart.
Yeah. You got to find that that fine balance in between humanity and self-preservation before you veer off into, something you may regret. But what's crazy is I've been researching this lately, William, and they talk about the pyramids and all the different, and they weren't just used for one thing. And they talked about how the Egyptians could heal workers when they put them down in this space that like if they broke bones or whatever, their doctors or medicine people could. It was like an X-ray. And what did they use? I can't remember what it was they used, but it talked about them switching souls into another body for those kings that lived for thousands of years. When the body would wear out, they would transfer the soul into another body.
Well, here's my thought too. Here's my thought too on that, Corey. I don't mean to interrupt you, but we got a little bit of a delay. But what if that so-called wristwatch that everybody sees on the Anunnaki statues wasn't a wristwatch or a battery at all? What if it was a device for the soul to be transferred to the next body?
Or part of it,
Yeah.
Like I started researching the Ankh key, Ankh, A-N-K, because that photograph we got of that thing materializing down on the Red River had a necklace on, and it looked like a lock right here, like some kind of how do I say this? It looked like it had a keyhole in it. And I was thinking, man, this thing is using this to travel through portals and control it somehow. And there's always something someone wears to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I'm trying to catch up with the chat here too.
That's all right.
Let's see.
And you talked about the soul track earlier. Man, I've been thinking about that too a lot.
Right.
A lot.
Well, here's another thing to consider too. What if the pyramids were not just an energy device? Okay. What if they weren't just something that collected energy from the atmosphere? What if they were something that released our souls into the cosmos where they belong?
Yes, I've thought about that too. There were many uses. It wasn't just one thing. They wouldn't have done it if that's all they could do. But like healing bones and wounds and stuff. There's stuff we can't even imagine. I heard a theory the other day that's where the massive dragons are under the pyramids in the big labyrinth that they discovered.
Yeah.
This is going to be crazier than anything we could imagine, I think.
Well, what if the crazy thing about it is that 2012 actually did happen?
I think it did.
What if it actually did happen and humanity was wiped out upon a scale that would trigger all this weirdness through the collective brain process? So
I'm gonna let
very
y'all.
Well, could be.
I'm gonna let y'all in on a little something, but I almost went crazy in 2012, and I'm talking about. I almost took myself out, but I was uncomfortable in my own skin. I felt, I don't know, it's hard to explain. And, I made it. And I just happened to talk to a friend one day and told her about it. And she was sitting there smiling. And I said, what? And she said, go ahead and finish. And then she taught me meditation and breathing. She had the same experience in 2012. A lot of people did. And then when I start doing this research and I keep finding these little bits and pieces of the puzzle talking about a coronal mass ejection coming off the sun, a big ball of radiation and fire that was going to destroy the planet. And what does good waits till the last second to do something? Something bumped it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the rift in with the Mandela effect, all that stuff. It's evidence that happened, you know. But they didn't do it to save us; they did it to save the planet. Is what I believe.
Exactly.
But I don't know if anybody else had a hard 2012, but mine was probably the worst year I've ever had. I thought I was going crazy.
Yeah.
And hell, I guess I might have been. But
then, you know, they talk about how the planet right now, the rhythm of the planet is that we live on has changed, and that they're blaming all the geological stuff that's happening possibly on the reversing of the polar, magnetic poles and all that. And the Schumann resonance has changed from a 7.43 or whatever to a 100, it's like 160 now. It's phenomenal. So
they're talking about the currents of the ocean and stuff coming to a standstill. Man, if that happens, we're doomed. Yeah. And if the poles flip, we're talking catastrophic, extreme weather from one day to the next. You know, it could be 110, and then the next day it'd be snowing. And tsunami.
Well, what if that was all just part of the program, though? I think the theatrical play in front of our eyes.
The phenomenon. I don't know if you ever heard of Nathaniel Gillis or not, demonologist, but I'm hooked on listening to him. He talks about the phenomenon and how it controls you. You were talking about our brains being computers earlier. He thinks the phenomenon when we see these cryptids and stuff like that, it's reading our mind and bringing up what we fear and manifesting that. And then after it manifests, it just spreads out into the world. You know, so what we're seeing is what somebody feared at one time and it read its mind. I know this sounds crazy, but you know, it's eye-opening. And he still says there's a creator.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's definitely a creator. Okay. There has to be a creator, a whether you call him source, whether you call him, God, whether you call him, Wankantanka, Inyan,
grandfather,
whatever you want to call him. Yeah. Grandfather. I mean, giving a name, having a created subject, being, naming its creator is a little idiotic, if you ask me. Okay. Because first off, you're giving your creator a name. Why would you think and even assume that you, being the created being, would have the right or the responsibility to name the creator? Okay.
Yeah, I've never thought about that.
I mean, think of, and this is how my brain is working. Okay. And it's not that I question anybody's religion. Okay, it's not that I question the sacrifices that Jesus Christ was, teaching us. But if you even take the teachings of Christ from the biblical aspect, which has been diluted since the King James version, okay, just so you all know, what if they talk about how the Christ is within us. Okay, say it's the part of our brainstem where the fluids flow down and give us that heightened energy, and then it ascends up into the heavens, into our brain, and gives us that euphoria type of a feeling. Okay, kind of like a climax during sex. Okay,
Or a drug.
that euphoria. Yeah, or a drug, exactly. So here's the thing. What if the beings that we call demons, the beings that we call archons, the beings that we call, and I don't want to offend anybody when I use this term, okay? I don't want to offend anybody when I use this term. But to me, and what I've seen through my walk in life, is that I'm going to put demons, the archons, and all that, reptilians, and I'm going to throw the angelic in there. And let me tell you why. Because to me, there is a difference between angelic and divine. Okay? There's a definitive difference between angelic and divine. When you talk about divine, you're talking about purity. You're talking about white. You're talking about light. You're talking about love. That is unconditional. Divine is unconditional. When you talk about angelic, you have to group the demonic into that, because when the angels were cast out of heaven, Lucifer and his fallen were cast out of heaven in the Bible, it states that they were taken from the divine level of beings and made lesser beings, okay, which are called demonic. Okay, so you have to assume that there is a definitive difference between the two. I'm sorry, I can't even see the chat right now, so I've got this.
I can't either.
Back to the chat. You have to assume that there is a difference. Okay, so let me see if there was any questions during that. Let me see what Bounty has to say. We can be linked to many copies of our physical tours. Yeah, they're out. Yep. Let's see what Celia has to say here. I noticed that things are happening on my computer that like I have no control over it. It's amazing when I get into this sensitive type of topics that stuff always happens. I don't think the Egyptians were as evil as the Jews say. Yeah, I believe Celia's got a point there.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. But you talked about.
Oh, come on now.
You talked about, the deal is, the duality is, well, Satan was the light bringer, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And you talk about the light. Could that be used as deception? I mean,
yeah.
If you're a thinker, you got to think that. You got to ask that question.
Yeah.
I mean,
if you also think about it too, that there is there is a definitive difference in some of the religions too, because the Zionist Jews don't believe in what the is Israeli Jews believe in. That and to me, when you dissect, and I have a habit of doing this, and sometimes it's bad and sometimes it's good, but when you dissect the Bible, okay, you can understand the difference between the Old Testament and the New Testament. Two completely different types of written history. Okay. So, how did we go from a God that being a vengeful God that will have no gods before him to a God walking the earth and preaching and teaching unconditional love, and that you must Christ was teaching, literally teaching humanity, that you need to separate your thought process, your brain, from your heart. That's the teaching. Okay. And to this day, most people can't even understand that concept. Okay. But when you're dealing with unconditional love, that means unconditional love, period. Okay. You accept and love somebody, and there's different levels of love, by the way. Okay. Okay. I'm not talking the lustful, oh, I love you, you're my love, and all this other crap. Okay. I'm not talking that kind of love. I'm talking a spiritual love where you are willing, dare I say, willing to sacrifice yourself unconditionally for your fellow mankind, like Christ did. And that's the whole concept. We went from a God that was ruling with an iron fist, a judgmental God, a vengeful God, a God that would send plagues at the drop of a hat because his creation had questions, to God that wants you to love unconditionally.
And there's that duality again.
I can't. Exactly. It's that duality again. So, I can't help but question it, guys. I really, make this make sense, is what I'm asking. Make it make sense to me, and to Corey, that there isn't more to the story, the reality that is going on in front of our eyes every minute of the day. Okay. Tell me how millions of people can go and be starving to death in a God created world with people not caring that they're starving to death. Tell me how. And I'm not atheist, okay, by the way, I just want these answers to these questions. So I just want these answers to these questions, because these are questions that atheists are going to have. Prove to me that your God is real. Okay. Okay. Well, let's put the questions out there. Okay. Let's think about this, And then that's how I got down this whole road of, well, my God, after the body dies, Da Vinci knew it. The Egyptians knew it, that we had to literally separate our brain process from our heart to let the soul ascend to the heavens. And it made sense to me. It literally made sense to me that's why the Egyptians are one of the only societies out there, civilizations out there that actually took it upon themselves to do that. You don't hear others, being spoken of that remove the brain, especially through the nose. Do you know what kind of technology you would need to know about the human body in order to even think that
You know,
process?
I've heard this theory that they did it with a stick of some kind, and these morticians or whatever, these of the past, knew how to hook the brain just right, and I guess it had to happen at a certain period in time after the death of the vessel, or the spirit and body and soul had left the vessel, and they hook that thing and pull it out of their nose. I heard the same thing, and I was like, man, that seems to me there'd be more than that.
Right. Exactly.
But then,
exactly.
Then again, you never know. That may be the right way, or the way they did it. But they were masters at embalmment of the body.
Yeah.
And I've heard
exactly. So why not?
Done some research, and they said that the main thing they used the most was garlic because of its antibacterial, components.
And one thing that I've always processed through thinking on how they were doing that process of removing the brain for mummification, is that not only the concept that they had to eliminate the brain from the body for the soul to ascend, okay, but also to the fact that they had to process the body a certain way as a tribute to the physical as the soul ascends. So therein lies the teachings again in indigenous cultures around the world, where you walk with reverence for everything, you have a respect and a love for everything, and do everything in a good way. And humanity doesn't do that anymore, at least the greater proportion of humanity. Okay. Now, what if this whole reptilian thing too, when you think about it, the reptilian race that's here, and they eat the flesh of the flesh and drink the adrenochrome and all that. And what if that is actually true? And it's part of this connected, you know how I'm always saying, connect the dots, people. You got 1 + 1 may not equal 2 all the time. 1 + 1 + 1 may equal 4 for all we know. Okay, you have to question everything. That's why I say question everything. Okay, so what if the collective process of the powers that be, that the race that wants to keep our soul here, knows that fact and is purposely trying to hide that fact from every person that has a soul on this planet, because they want that reprocessing, that kind of like cattle processing of the adrenochrome to keep going, and the food source. Let's just face it. Okay, what if the missing people? What if the millions of missing people every year are unfortunate parts of that process?
The harvest.
You know what I mean? Exactly.
Yeah.
I didn't want to say it, but that's a good way to put it. The harvest.
Yeah. I was reading, William, I don't know if the Lakota did this or not, but I can't remember which tribe it was. But I was reading, they said that they had tribal members whose specific job was to do this, and they would sit after a person passed. They sat with the body for a year and protected it, because they believed that it took a full year for the spirit and the soul to ascend, and would sit and guard them for a year
Yeah. And
and
yeah,
protect them.
because and I've never heard of the Lakotas doing that. As far as my bloodline goes, with
Yeah.
my fathers and my uncles teaching me, but I've heard that same thing of them sitting there for an undetermined period of time until they knew that the
Yeah.
soul did process on, and you know, it's kind of ironic when you think about it. What is the whole soul thing transferring on with the Egyptians? They have to go in front of Anubis, and the whole weight of the soul process. You know, what if the whole scale system of going to the afterlife in the Egyptian culture was based on the fact that your soul doesn't leave your body all at once. Maybe it would leave your body a little bit at a time, and that they
Hmm.
knew the exact measurement and weight of your soul for the scales to show that your soul is complete to move on. I'm just saying, guys. I'm just saying. It
Hey,
kind of makes sense. It makes
William,
sense if you think about it.
William, I heard an EVP voice. These people were doing an investigation in a cemetery, and it was a lady, and they asked, is anyone here? And this lady in the spirit box said, "Has God forgotten about us?" Like
Wow.
she's sitting there wait. Yes, yes. And then I just have to wonder sometimes, maybe they were sped through the process, and there's
Exactly.
they they didn't come through complete, and
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And another thing too, is you have to understand too, though, or at least take this into consideration. All those pictures that you see of accident scenes, of tragic scenes of somebody passing, and you see the anguished look on the spirit's face above the accident scene.
Mhm.
Okay. What if they knew that it was not the way they were supposed to go, and that's why they were screaming? What if it wasn't the pain that they went through or the tragedy from the accident? What if it's the anger and the anguish of having to endure another cycle through this realm because their complete soul isn't released from the body? It's just a thought.
a provoking thought, but it's
Yeah.
possible. I
Thank you, Roxanne. Yes, please like,
every
share, and subscribe. Smash that thumbs
every
up.
every time I start researching, looking for answers, I end up with 100 more questions.
Exactly. Okay. Tanya says brain, physical, heart, spiritual. Bible says to take every thought captive in the obedience of God, Jesus Christ. The enemy attacks our thoughts, but can't affect our souls if we belong to Christ. That's the thing, Tanya. Okay, that's the thing. I was hoping somebody would bring this up, Tanya, and I'm going to explain to you why. Okay. And I love you all in the chat, by the way. You guys are phenomenal. Okay. You guys, hey, Camo Dad, good to see you. You guys are literally phenomenal in the chat. And you're not only helping me process these questions, but you're helping others out there that may have this same thought process or this same question. And the whole brain, physical, heart, soul, spiritual, Bible says to take every thought captive to the obedience of Jesus Christ. The enemy attacks our thoughts, but can't affect our souls if we belong to Christ. But was it talking that Christ in the human form representing God, or was Christ actually God? Now I know that it says that in the Bible, in the New Testament, that Christ is literally the creator, God, okay? But what if it was talking about that spot back here on the back of your brain, okay? Where if you knew that you had that divine spark within you, okay, and you could process that place in the back of your brain that they call the Christ, to help you ascend, okay? And what if they knew that the only way to process that ascension is what the Egyptians figured out, that you had to separate the brain, the physical, from the spiritual and the soul of the body? That's the only question I have. Okay, I'm not questioning the fact that Christ is God. Okay, I'm not questioning the fact that
Right.
Jesus Christ wasn't real. I'm not questioning the fact that there is a creator, because I know damn well there's a creator, because I see things all the time. Okay, I have been a Wachashi for a very long time, folks. Okay, I have dealt in the dark arts, the darkest of dark arts. I have been there. Okay, I have seen things and done things that the human body shouldn't be able to do. Okay, that's why I question everything. Okay, and this is just one of those things that I'm just, I'm questioning. Okay, I'm not questioning. Hey, Monisha, I'm not questioning the fact that Christ wasn't God. I'm not questioning the fact that God isn't God. I'm not questioning the fact that, that the Jewish people are the Jewish people. Okay, I'm not questioning any of that, because you know why? I know the Creator exists. Okay, and the first descriptive word in the Bible describes his name as the Creator. Okay, doesn't say God, doesn't say Lord in heaven, it doesn't say any of that. It says Creator. The first definitive descriptive name of God, the Creator, is the Creator.
The great
Okay.
creator.
Now, when you see things like in God we trust, yeah, when you see things in God we trust on money, which God are you trusting? Because I've always said it, you have to understand that this world has been hijacked.
Yep.
It's been completely hijacked by a lesser God, a lesser being than the Creator. Okay. You call him Lucifer, you call him Satan, you call him the demiurge, you call him whatever you want, you call his dominion, his legions, demons, you call them archons, you call them, or I call them reptilians, okay, which are represented in the form of gargoyles on ancient structures. So, I mean, it all makes sense if you connect the dots. Okay. Now, I'm not saying, and I'm not denying that Christ didn't exist. Okay. All I am merely saying is that divine spark that everybody's been looking for, is within us.
The one that's been blocked.
Even in the Gnostic, yeah, exactly. Even in the Gnostic beliefs, you know, I don't know if anybody out there studies Gnosticism or Gnosis, but you know, this whole concept of that divine spark is legitimized in that religious belief, because it talks about how the Sophia placed the spark the pleura in everybody. Okay, a piece of that divine, that level of divinity of where the creator is within each of us. Okay, so when you take that concept and you hear all these teachings about it, and I don't want to offend anybody again, okay, because and I'll probably say this a dozen times today, all right, but to me, when you talk about aliens, you're talking about demons, you're talking about archons, okay?
Yes.
You're talking about
Yes.
forms of angelic beings that come from the skies, the heavens, that ascend to this realm on earth to do one thing, and that's to process humanity like they're cattle. Okay, that is not a divine being. That is not a star seed. Okay, I'm sorry. That is not a star seed. And I'll tell you right now, 50% of the time you're staring your own humanity right in front of your eyes, because it's the shadow government or the military that has these black op programs that are doing it. Okay. There, my camera just turned off. As soon as I pointed to my camera and said that, the camera turned off and turned back on. They know that when they're dealing with me, they're dealing with somebody that can read far past whatever their path has been. Okay. So they know. And it's surprisingly that they let me continue talking about this stuff. But I have a much more divine power than they can ever perceive protecting me. Okay. So that in itself makes them cringe.
Something tried to stop me from listening to you for probably 5 months, something like that. And when I would get on your podcast, it would interfere with the audio. And I mean, it did it every time you came on. It was doing it with anyone else's podcast, just yours. And you know me, I ain't gonna stop.
Yeah, I know.
And then all of a sudden, one day,
it's not just it's yeah. Yeah, and it's not just you out there that it's being done to. I got one thumbs up in the chat. Wow, one thumbs up. Come on, guys. If anybody can see the thumbs up on YouTube, let me know what it says currently, because they're saying I've got one thumbs up. Okay, and these are all just questions. Monisha, I want you to come on and tell us what happened supernaturally wise. Okay. So I'm gonna.
Hey, I'm gonna get off here. I'm gonna get off here with him and let Manisha come on and give some other people a chance to talk. So I've got to tie up some loose ends. But
okay, all right, brother.
I appreciate you having me on. I'll see you.
All right, bro. Okay, let me get back to the chat. I'm sorry, but when I start talking, I don't follow the chat, guys. Ted Nugent from Michigan is absolutely right. Everyone needs to. We're not going to get into that stuff, Jason. I like Nugent too, but you know, we got a lot of problems in this world, man, and the lower thinking, the lower thinking humanity is the problem right now, and you have certain groups of individuals that are that know that and want humanity to fail. So that being said, let's see. We were changing it again. The pole flips every 1,000 happenings. That is a long 10,000 year control loop that flips into corruption back to the clean slate. Exactly. I agree. Okay, Monisha, if you want to come on, come on. Amy, if you want to come on, I'll bring you on too, and we can continue this conversation. Okay. Um, Other than that, if nobody wants to come on, let me know. And I'm trying to get to the new comments. I'm trying to get to the new comments, but hey, Luna, good to see you. '18. Hi, Sue. I don't understand how there can show 18 and then on StreamYard it shows me that I've got one thumbs up. That is weird. You see, that's the way it goes. When you talk about sensitive topics and you bring up questions, you know, legitimate questions too, by the way, and legitimate thought processes. Okay, these are just my own opinions and the way I thought about this whole thing. Okay, so I'm going to bring Monisha on, and we were going to bring her on a couple of weeks ago, but I got real sick. So, hi,
Hi,
Monisha.
everybody. Hi, William. How are you?
How are you this morning?
I am good. I'm glad that my phone is working correctly so I could be on your show today and enjoy your show. Today I woke up crying because I'm a girl
Uh-oh.
and we have emotions, but
What are you
I
crying about? What are you crying about, you little sissy?
I know. I woke up emotional
You
and I was
woke up
crying emotional because my charger was broken and it made no sense, and my
mm,
sons were looking at me like, "Why is she crying today?" But I don't know. I was feeling emotional, but I feel happy
well, I
because
mean,
my phone charged enough to get to see your show this morning or this afternoon here.
that's cool. That's cool. I'm glad you're here. And I know we were going to bring you on last time, and I just got really, really ill. I literally felt like I was on my deathbed. So that's how bad it was.
Yeah.
And I'm still not 100%, and I never will be. But it is what it is. I deal with it and I move on. And but I'm very interested. You said you had something you wanted to talk about, dealing with the supernatural and all that and the paranormal. And I wanted to bring you on because the last conversation we had was very, very interesting. And I want you to basically just you know tell everybody in your own words. Take your time. You don't have to rush or anything. Basically what happened. I'm going to turn my camera off temporarily to finish my cup of coffee and to take some medication, and I will be right back in about 30 seconds.
Okay. Well, I used to work at a Catholic school, and I was just a janitor after school hours, and like it was around this time last year, and I um I worked there for 4 years, and shortly before my boss let me go, I had uh I had like an experience where when I got off of work, I was the last person to leave. And um when like basically when I went outside of the school building, I started hearing what sounded to me like tribal music, like Indian tribe. And
Mhm.
I I had never heard that you know sound before there, but I'd noticed some things on the land that let me know this was Indian land that was
Mhm.
probably stolen. Um, but like with the trees, the way certain trees grew out of the ground, it was like signs that it was like old Indian ground, and I find that a lot here in Cincinnati or whatever, and it's not marked off. It's no like signs that says this used to be what it used to be, but I could definitely tell. But around that time, I would say like 4 days before the day that this experience happened, I was online, and I had learned about people having like experiences with owls. And this particular night, as as I was hearing like the tribal music, I'd heard like an owl hoot, but I didn't see the owl. And the land is on like a hill, like a big hill. And the school was like one, two, three, four buildings. One was like the elementary, one was like a church building, and it had like a art class and a music class in there. And then like a middle school building and a high school building, but they're small. It's like a private school or whatever. And I was the only one left on the property. I was the last one to leave. And like on the hill to the left of all the buildings, there's a lot of trees, and I've seen deer there in the daytime. But I got off about 9 at night, and it was dark. So I heard the owl to the left, but I heard the tribal music behind all the buildings to the right. But there's like a hill behind all the buildings, and I in my soul, in my body, I felt fear. And I'm like,
Mhm.
what is this? I was so afraid. I walked off the property, but the principal's house is the first house on the street that leads up to the building. So I'm like, I felt so afraid. I stood in front of her house because she knows me. I work for them, and I felt safer in front of her house while I was waiting for Uber to come pick me up because my car had broke down. So my son called me a Uber, and I stayed on the phone with my son, and I'm like, Chris, I am afraid, and I don't want to get off the phone with you because I feel unsafe. And it was like the first time I felt unsafe in a long time. But I I'm not quite sure, but I kind of think what was the tribal music, flute, drum, singing combo? Okay, it was like I'm sorry, the tribal music sounded like drums, kind of sounded like people around a fire, kind of possibly dancing or like doing a tribal thing. I'm not sure exactly what to call it, but it it sounded also like it was a recording, like it was on a loudspeaker. And I knew no one's in the school building to control a a loudspeaker or anything, but it sounded like it was coming from behind all of the buildings, like closer to the woods up the large hill. And I was too afraid to go back there and investigate. I felt unsafe. And like what it was for me, like I wanted to get your insight because um I didn't feel fear of like the tribal music sound. I had more fear of the owl, and I've been hearing different things, but I kind of
Well, with my people, with my people and our beliefs when it comes to the owl, and that's why I popped Amy's comment up here too. The sad part about it is the owls are messengers if you know how to hear them. Um, with my people, the indigenous culture of the Lakota, we believe that the owl is a messenger of tragedy, of death coming. Okay. Now take that in consideration. Okay. And I'm going to pop a picture up here to show everybody. When I talk about the owl being the messenger of something tragic happening, what do you think this picture of a so-called supernatural entity that's been spotted in West Virginia and Ohio, all the way up into Illinois and even the West Coast, has been described as?
mm,
The Mothman. To me, it looks like an owl. Okay. Now that's just to
yeah,
me. Now this is just a rendition of what was seen. Okay. But it's also associated with what? Tragedy. Okay. The Silver Bridge collapse, for one. Okay. So it's always marked with tragedy. So to me, when you're dealing with an owl, you're dealing with a part of this world that has a connection to the supernatural. Okay, that can go back and forth between dimensions, as you know, as many people call it. Okay. um so when you hear an owl, we always, whenever we hear an owl, it's bad. Okay. But it's
yeah,
not as bad as actually physically seeing it. Okay. When you
yeah,
physically see an owl, then it's even worse. Okay. Now, it's my thought and my beliefs that in that area, well, Cincinnati as a whole, okay, in the whole area of Cincinnati, you're talking blood-soaked ground. Okay.
yeah.
You're literally talking about where places where, the Great Lakes native cultures fought amongst themselves for game, for land, for, you know,
Okay,
all kinds of different things. Okay. You have the Seneca people that fought the Algonquin. You have the Algonquin people that fought the Chippewa. You have, and on down the line. Okay. You have all these cultures. Then you have the Shawnee coming up into that area, and the Cherokee, and fighting amongst them. So you had all this diverse tribal nations fighting amongst each other. Okay. Over whether it was spiritual rights to sacred areas that they considered sacred land. But not only do you have that blood soaked ground, but you got to understand, usually where native people passed and perished, that's where they were buried. So
I
you could
could,
literally, yeah, that area could literally be a walking burial ground. It could
yeah,
be I mean, you said that you described that it was on a hill. What if,
yeah.
what if that hill was a burial ground, a burial mound?
That makes so much sense to me because it's like you've heard of snake mounds and everything like that. It's like two hills connect, and I would love to see like a picture from a plane overview to see how that looks from up top, because I was always on the ground or whatever. But I I imagine that after I don't know the time frame, but when like the white man came over and started taking land from like the Indians and everything, that it was, like negative things happening on the land through the white people taking over and everything. And then the fact that it's a Catholic school, and I'm not sure what year it was created, but I know people like I had an electrician at my old house that went to the same Catholic school, but he couldn't find it as an adult. So when I told him I worked there, he's like, "Oh my God, like I used to go to that school." And I'm thinking, like, if the school goes back to like the 1800s or something like that, because I don't know exactly, but that they could have used the school to put, the Indian children that they would take from the parents and educate, but it wasn't a positive
Yeah.
thing.
I know that too well. I've dealt with that in my own family. As far
It,
as having a
huh?
grandfather, my
Kamarion,
grandfather passed. My grandfather passed.
I've been right here on a podcast that I'm currently on. Sorry, my son. I
Oh,
went
that's
to the
okay. It's okay.
store last night and I parked it in the driveway. Okay. Sorry about that, guys.
My own family was affected by the whole having the native children taken and put into Catholic what they called boarding schools. Um,
Yeah.
one of the more famous ones was Carlisle Indian School, as a matter of fact. Um,
Could
my
could you say
grandfather, uh,
that name again of the school? I'm sorry, because I want to write it down and maybe look, look
it's
into it.
yeah, it's Carlisle Indian School. It was in Pennsylvania,
Okay.
just east of the Youngstown, Ohio area, basically,
Okay.
inside Pennsylvania.
Wow.
And my own grandfather and three of his siblings were some survivors of the Wounded Knee Massacre, December 29th, 1890, when the
Wow.
reformed 7th Cavalry decided to attack, 300 plus innocent women and children and old men of the Lakota Nation. And only because we were doing what they called the ghost dance. And the government at that time feared that the ghost dance wasn't a spiritual dance, that it was more of a rebellious type of a warring dance, trying to excite the nations again to claim war against the United States. And that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
Anyways, when they went and they gathered up all what meager weapons they had for hunting and stuff from all the elderly and young kids and stuff that were there, and women, they Chief Sitting Bull's son was there, and he was said to be a deaf mute, and
Okay.
basically his rifle discharged when he put it amongst the pile, and that's when they opened fired with Gatling guns and all that, and basically massacred everybody. My grandfather and two of his three siblings that were with him, one was a younger brother, and two were younger sisters. My grandfather at the time was going to be somewhere between 12 and 13 years old. Okay, so he was
Okay.
he was getting close to being considered a warrior. Okay,
Yeah.
um, so but they were at the river, the Wounded Knee Creek, gathering water for the elders. the skirmish happened, when the white, reformed 7th Cavalry decided to open fire. And my father used to tell me that, grandfather used to tell him the horror story of what he saw when he looked over the ridge down at where everybody was camped, and he started seeing all the people falling. And he watched as basically the soldiers would go and make mockery of the bodies of the people that were laying on the ground deceased, and how some of the soldiers were walking through the encampment and making sure that his people and my people were dead by putting a final bullet into their head. And that's a lot of you judge me for how hard I am on the government, and how hard I am on everything as far as the United States goes. I'm judgmental. I don't mean to be hard, but when you come from a family history that has that,
Yeah.
You tend to take a negative point of view towards society as a whole. And that's another reason why I got into the dark arts of the Native American path, and why I did as much as I did. And I'll be the first one to admit, like you're talking about hearing the owl and hearing the music and all that. I'll be the first one to admit out there amongst all the Wachashawakans and holy men and medicine people in America and all the missing nations, because I did it for them. I embraced the darkness. Okay. And I took my native teachings from my elder, my mother, that taught me the dark arts. And I utilized that to put forth certain spells through ceremony on certain locations. Okay. I called forth, and I know I'm not the only one that's done it. Okay. I there may be others out there that can't understand where I'm coming from. And this is why I'm talking about this right now. Okay. When you come from a family history of your grandfather, who I didn't even have the pleasure of knowing because he passed before I was born. So I learned it all through my uncles and my father. You tend to drag a lot of hatred around with you, a lot of anger. And when I did the ceremonies when I was younger with the dark arts, I would take certain areas and I would basically cast a spell upon it, basically bringing forth those elements, the spirits of the land, to protect certain areas that we deemed sacred, certain areas where I knew there was Native people buried. Kinzu Dam was one of them. Okay. Those of you that live in the Allegheny Mountains in Pennsylvania know that there's a lot of weird shit that happens there. But you might be able to connect that back to me, but not just me, but to other medicine people too, because we have called forth, and I'm not saying all the medicine people, I'm just saying a certain few know that they have done this to call forth the spirits of the
You have your
land
phone?
to protect that part of the land and to protect our ancestors' land and the sacredness of it. And to this day, they talk about Bigfoot sightings in that area of the Allegheny Mountains. They talk about dogman sightings in that area of the Allegheny Mountains. They talk about all kinds of weird stuff. They talk about how these giant birds come down, and swoop deer off and all that, and have been seen flapping their wings 20 foot across. Everything that I was taught by my parent as a dark medicine woman, she taught me that I don't do anything unless I am 100% sure that I want it to work. And that once I do it, I cannot take it back again. Okay. And I know in my heart of hearts, I'm not the only Native person that has done this. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm over 60 years old now. Okay. And my path has changed so much. Okay. That I put that bitterness behind me, that anger behind me, that resentment behind me all those years ago. But I know that I'm not the only one that's done that and has been there. Okay. And that's
Yeah.
why a lot of people are seeing what they're seeing, especially in certain areas of the country. The Appalachian Trail is another one. Okay. My mother was Cherokee. Where do you think the Cherokee roamed? The Appalachian Trail.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, of course, I'm going to pray for that area in ceremony and protect it. Why do you think there's so much weirdness on the Appalachian Trail? Okay. That is literally the Appalachian Trail to me and to the Cherokee Nation was the backbone of Mother Earth. It was everything to the Cherokee people and to the Shawnee people, because I have Shawnee blood in me too. Okay. So, of course I'm going to protect that. Of course I'm going to do things to prevent non-indigenous people to enjoy what they've taken from us. Okay. So, that in itself is why a lot of people are having these encounters like yourself, Monisha. And yeah, I do blame myself. But Corey brings up a good point too about how the giants could possibly be buried there too. And that's the other thing too, Corey. If you think about the legends of the Cherokee people, you have Six Fingers, the giant that used to chase the Cherokee people, and he had the ability to jump from ridge line to ridge line on mountains. That's how big he was. In fact, there's a rock along the Appalachian Trail that to this day has his handprint in it.
Okay.
And there's so much that people don't understand and can't comprehend. When I tell you everything is connected, everything is connected. When you're seeing a cryptid, you're dealing with supernatural powers.
Yeah.
Okay, you're not dealing with just flesh and blood. Some of them are just flesh and blood. Okay, but they have come forth that way because of the intense manifestation of something. You can literally, it's like getting back to that divine spark thing within each of us. We all have that divine spark within us. We have that ability to manifest whatever we want. Okay. But there's a certain way you have to do it. 90% of the ceremonies, 90% of the ceremonies that I did and the prayers that I do aren't even verbal. They're all up here. Okay. And here. Okay. Depending on what the outcome is I want. If I want something evil to happen, I utilize this. If I want something loving and good to happen, I utilize this, my heart. Do you understand? There's things out there. There's a way in this life that people don't comprehend. That people will never, non-indigenous people will never have the ability to comprehend it, because I'm sorry, but they're calling themselves star seeds. Okay. They're calling themselves shamans. And I don't, and like I said, I'm going to say it again. I don't want to offend anybody. Okay. I love you all very much, but it's the truth. Okay. It's the truth. A real shaman is not going to teach you everything. A real medicine person is not going to teach you everything. 75% of what we as medicine people learn, we learn in our path, in our walk, in our journey. Okay. 25% of the stuff that we learn from our medicine elders and our spiritual elders is what they teach us to give us a foundation to work with. Then we go off. We go off for days, weeks, months, sometimes even years on that journey. And we come back. The only way to describe it is when we come back more enlightened because we made that connection. Okay. That's why when medicine people do things, and I don't care what culture you are around the world, that's why when voodoo priests and priestesses do things, things happen. That's why when witch doctors in South America and Africa do things, it happens. Okay. The same thing with medicine people and shaman. It happens because we have made the sacred connection. People that are calling themselves shamans out there, you call yourselves whatever you want. Okay. I don't, it doesn't affect me one way or the other. Okay. You could put on a white robe and call yourself Jesus for all I care. Okay. And that's the truth. Okay. It's just, you have no concept of what is actually needed to become a shaman or a medicine person or a witch doctor for that matter. You can't conceive just because a shaman, a real shaman takes you and exactly Urso. And I'm glad you said that, man. See, that's why I'm glad Urso's in the chat right there. There are no shaman in America. Okay. Plain and simple. All right. Shaman come from South America. Okay. So if you're claiming yourself a shaman, I hope you're, born in Peru or Venezuela or Brazil or, Argentina, all those other areas, because if you're taught by a real shaman, you're going to take the ayahuasca, the way the drink, and you're going to do ceremonies and stuff, but they're not going to teach you everything, because a real shaman and a medicine person knows that you got to experience it. You got to learn yourself. You got to teach yourself. Okay. So getting back to what you were talking about with the music and stuff, that's why you hear music and you hear owls and you see things and stuff. It's because of the medicine people sending forth a spell to certain areas of the country. Okay. Certain areas of Mother Earth. And a lot of people that have, well, just do this, for instance, okay, out there, everybody that's out there listening right now, take, for instance, the fact that who has the worst experiences with cryptids? Ask yourself that. Is it the indigenous people? No. Is it the people of an indigenous culture like Monisha? No. It's non-indigenous people that have no concept on what they're dealing with. Plain and simple.
Yeah.
Okay.
I talked to a coworker that worked there that actually got me the job at that location, and they just told me recently that they heard the tribal music too before, and I was surprised because I I hadn't had a chance to talk to that person about it, and I brought it up in a conversation recently, and I was surprised that someone else heard it because at that time I didn't have contact with that person, but it kind of made me feel better that I wasn't the only person that experienced something like that. And I asked if he felt like scared or fear because I felt it really like a lot that night or whatever. And it actually I heard it 2 nights, not just one, but both times I felt afraid on the inside. And I just I left the property like I'm gonna stand in front of my principal's house because I don't think she'll call the police. And it was kind of like um a suburban neighborhood, and I didn't want to like make people afraid that this black girl is just standing out in front of their house or whatever. But I I think that someone that worked as a teacher at that school was practicing witchcraft, and I think it was the art teacher, and no one on here will know who that is. That's why I'm not scared to say it online or whatever. But the art teacher gave me really negative vibes every time I encountered her, but all the other teachers gave me a friendly vibe. And I thought it
Uh-huh.
was interesting that just this one teacher demeanor was totally different than everyone else. But by me being the nighttime janitor, I noticed that there a good thing about like the school was that the principal made sure she put plants throughout the school in the classrooms and the hallways and things like that. But I noticed that there were mushrooms growing in some of the plants that people wouldn't notice, and I don't know like why I was the person to notice the mushrooms growing, but I don't I can't say that I witnessed this teacher doing things, but I kind of get feelings about things, and I kind of like think that because I have Indian in my blood, I'm not trying to say it in a bad way or word it incorrectly, but my dad's mother is Indian and she passed away when I was 16. So I didn't get to ask her a lot of questions about my heritage, and I wish that when I was a young person that I knew the right things to ask or bring up because my grandma was a wonderful lady. And
Can I
with
ask you which bloodline you are? What tribal affiliation?
so
My guess is
I
Cherokee.
I my dad told me that we were like Cherokee and Blackfoot. So that's what I have to go on, but I really want to start doing my genealogy on both sides because I know on my mother's side there is some Indian going back a few generations, but
Okay,
I know on my dad's
here's
side.
here's one thing I want to make clear to everybody, okay? If you
Uh-huh.
have one drop of indigenous blood within you, okay, that's all it takes.
Okay.
Okay. Now this is the thing. A lot of us, are still bitter, and we want you to have to be full blooded to claim that you're First Nation, okay, like myself, okay. But what you need to do, anybody out there that's listening that has any Cherokee blood in them whatsoever, I don't care if it's one drop, 5%, 25%, half, doesn't matter. Okay. Anybody that has any indigenous blood within them, I want you to do this ceremony. Okay. And it's a very simple ceremony. You could do this ceremony in your shower, taking a shower. Okay. So consider that. You can do it in a swimming pool. You can do it in a creek, a lake, it doesn't matter. Okay. And it's called the 7 Blessings Ceremony.
Okay.
Okay. This ceremony will build you. It'll ask your ancestors to show you things. Okay. It'll ask your ancestors to bless everything around you. Maybe not you, but you will reap the blessings from blessing other things around you and other people. Okay. So that being said, this is a way of showing that you are willing to walk in a good way, that you are willing to give up your own request for blessings to help out the universe around you. Okay. And it's called the 7 Blessings Ceremony. And what I want you to do is, if you're in the shower or if you're in the bathtub or whatever you do, okay, or a swimming pool, and don't worry about what people think. It doesn't freaking matter, because you know what? When it comes down to it, they're going to be the ones wanting questions answered when it comes their time to cross over. Okay.
Yeah.
It won't be you. Okay. So that being said, okay, you're going to take the water in your hands. If you're standing in the shower or you're laying in the bathtub, take the water in your hands, cup it like you're cupping water. Okay.
Okay.
Pour it over your head and over your entire body. Okay. Over your eyes and everything, with your eyes closed. You're going to do that 7 times. Okay. Each time you get done with that, when you put the water over you, you put your hands in the air facing east. You have to face east. That's the thing. Okay. So you stand east.
Okay.
With both your hands in the air. Okay. And you say a prayer for somebody else or something. It could be your grandmother. It could be your neighbor. It could be your dog. It could be the bear where it craps in the woods. It could be for the rivers to run pure again. It could be for the buffalo to return again. It could be for whatever you want. Okay. Whatever you want, as long as it is not for yourself.
Okay.
Okay. And it has to be a different prayer for something or somebody every time. So you're going to put the water over you, or you're going to submerge yourself within the water and stand up with your arms in the air facing east, and you're going to say a prayer for somebody, okay, or something. Okay. I pray that, that the crops have a bountiful harvest, and then you're going to go back down again, submerge yourself in the water or pour the water over you, come back up, and you're going to put your arms in the air and say that prayer for somebody else or something else 7 times in a row facing east. Okay. I guarantee when you get done, if you have 1 drop of native blood in you, when you get done with that ceremony, you're going to feel a calm about you that you've never experienced. Okay. Because what you did there is you are literally taking the life force, the supernatural force of the water. And even the Bible talks about the water. Okay. And how I've always told you guys, it's the water. Water is the conduit to everything. Okay. When I tell you to talk to your water, you energize your water. You give it that positive. You tell the water, I love the refreshment that you give me. You nourish my body and my spirit. Every time you take a drink. Okay. Oh, Larry, you're awesome. You're awesome, brother. Thank you. Thank you for being here for 12 months, man. That means a lot. You have no idea how much that means, Larry. Let me see if I can. I'm trying to. Come on now, work with me. See, now my computer's acting up. There we go. Um, but what you want to do is that 7 times in a row. Okay, say a prayer for somebody or something else. Okay, and like I said, it could be about the wildlife in the area. It could be about the purity of the water in the area. It could be about I want people to not starve, this winter. I don't want people to freeze to death this winter.
Yeah.
As long as it's about something or somebody else and not yourself, that's the key. And if you have one drop of native blood in you, you will feel that calmness. You will feel that you have made a connection to the supernatural that you've never experienced. And if you do that and you can do it every day if you want to. Okay. It's just a way of embracing the supernatural, your ancestors, the Tunkashila, grandfather. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a way of sacrificing yourself, the needs of yourself for the world around you, which goes back to what? Unconditional love.
Yeah.
See, everything that we as indigenous people do, you can pretty much take it and correlate it to everything that Christ was teaching too. Okay, you really can. How the needs of one does not exceed the needs of all.
Yeah.
Okay, when a warrior hunted and protected his family, he meant the entire nation.
Yeah.
He didn't mean just his wife and his children. He meant everybody.
Yeah.
That's the way it should be. But see, there are powers in this world that seek the ruin of humanity on all levels.
Yeah.
And whether you call it Satan, Lucifer, demons, archons, the demiurge, I don't care what you call it. It's a negative evil. In the Bible, it describes it as evil governors and principalities. Okay. So when you're dealing with it, you have to think, well, what's a principality? What's an evil governor? Now, the first thing that comes to mind are political figures. Think about it. Okay. There are certain political figures that want things a certain way, their way, no matter whether it's the majority that wants it or not. They
Yeah.
want it done their way. Okay. So you have to you take everything into consideration. Okay. But anyways, when you get done with that ceremony, the first time you're going to feel different. You're going to
Okay.
feel a calmness and you're going to feel a relaxedness that you've never experienced. And that'll open up so much more for you, Manisha, and everybody that's in the chat that's listening. When you do that, you just do it 7 times in a row. Raise your hands up with your eyes closed. Say a prayer for somebody else or something else after immersing yourself in water. Do it 7 times in a row facing east. And let me know. Next time we're in here on the chat, let me know. Next Sunday, let me know. Okay.
Okay.
How you felt after that and see what happens. Okay.
Okay.
So, but Manisha, I want you to, is there anything else you wanted to discuss at all or?
Um, Not really right now, but I do want to show you something that's very special to me. My son took a vacation this year and he went to Florida, and he brought back things for me and his siblings, but the only thing that I wanted and I begged for was Florida water. And when you brought up water and the power of it and stuff, I just wanted to show you guys my Florida water that he brought me back. And it's got sand in it, but it's special to me, and that's the only thing that I wanted him to get for me or whatever. And last year he went, but he forgot to bring it back. So I'm like, I really just want Florida water, Florida water. And his sweet
Yep.
girlfriend, she made sure he remembered, and she got a bottle for me, and they got it together. And I just wanted to show everybody my Florida water because it's special to me. And
And that's the other thing. That's awesome too, because you know, they talk about the fountain of youth being in Florida. For the longest time, they thought that, okay, but the fountain of youth is around you every moment of the day as long as you're around water. The whole premise of the fountain of youth wasn't the fact that it was a physical location. Okay, it's I did a story a while back. I released a short video, 20-minute video about the hidden waters, and
okay,
it talks about the Cherokee legend of the enchanted lake, and how this lake would only appear to people that were pure at heart. And
okay,
within this lake and around this lake, this enchanted lake, was these the beauty of the environment, the beauty of Mother Earth, and it was filled with wildlife, and you know. But the thing of it was if you were gifted the ability to see the enchanted lake, you weren't allowed to take anything from it, which
okay,
included hunting the animals and stuff that lived around it. Okay. So everything was connected to that enchanted lake, that sacred water. Well, it's the same story with the fountain of youth. Everybody's searching for the fountain of youth. The fountain of youth is the water, period. It's your conduit to the spirit world. As above, so below. Okay. The water's above and the water's below. Science just proved that there is even a denser water beneath the ocean.
yeah,
In the Mariana Trench, they discovered a spot in the floor of the ocean that was open like a cave, and they went to pierce it, and the water was thicker than the water above it. They couldn't pierce it. Okay, so when you're talking about the sacredness of water, you have to understand that when it comes to the supernatural, that since we're all energy, how do you think our energy is going to travel? Do you think our energy is going to travel better in open air, or do you think it's going to travel better in a conduit that can actually send energy through it, like copper? Okay, water's the same thing like copper. Okay, so it's all connected, man. I'm telling you. The more I say it, the more I want you all to see it, and you will eventually see that it is all connected.
yeah,
And you'll be like, holy crap. 20 years from now, you'll be like, holy shit, Nighthawk was right. It is. It's all connected. And by then, hopefully by then, I'll be on the other side doing my own thing. But when 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 you actually, I mean, nothing grows without water, folks. Nothing. The human body doesn't survive without water, some form of water for more than 3 days. You can go 3 days. So, I mean, if you can't see it, then you're just not willing to see it. Okay. When everything can be connected in this reality, literally everything, whether you're indigenous or not. And
yeah.
I
That
always say, I've always had this saying too, after I got out of the dark arts, that basically, if you want to say you're native, that's fine. Say you're native. But, to me, being Native American, being indigenous is more of a heart issue. If you have that in your heart, even though it's not in your blood, you can be native, if that makes sense to anybody. Okay. Hi,
yeah,
Michelle. Good to see you. Um, but yeah, I just, I'm glad you came on. I'm glad you talked about the owl and the music and stuff, because do that ceremony and let me know what happens.
Okay. I'm excited for it. But I'm
All
gonna
right.
hop off and get back in the chat because my phone is my battery is getting low and my charger isn't
Okay.
charging correctly. But thanks for having me on.
Thank you for
And
being here.
no problem. And have a great day. Um,
You too, dear. Have a great day. Give the family my love, and
okay.
tell them to be safe. Okay, safe and happy. That's the way
Okay.
to be.
Thanks, William.
Well, I want everybody to try that ceremony, if you would. Okay. Um, just give it a shot. I mean, you're not questioning if you're Christian or if you're Muslim. You're not questioning any of that. Okay. If you're Buddhist would probably do it anyways, because it's an earthen religion. Um, it's a respectful religion of all things. So, but try that ceremony. Okay. And let me know how you feel afterwards. Some of you may not feel anything unless you do it a few times. Okay. Some of you may not feel anything unless you do it for a few times in a row. And what I would do is I would do it at least 7 days, 7 times in a row. Okay. Um, and the reason I say that is because how many archangels are there? 7. Okay. One of the most powerful numbers in numerology is what? 7. 777. Okay. It's a confirmation number. Okay. It's a number that will help you confirm things to the supernatural, to the spiritual. Okay. And it's like I said, everything is connected in this life and beyond. And I think that if we go through our lives constantly utilizing this, our brain, we're never going to use our heart, when our heart is actually our first brain. When you put your left hand onto a tree, you're connecting your your conduit, your left arm, to your heart. Okay? So when you say a prayer, what you want to do is remember that everything is connected to your heart in this walk in life. And I'm a firm believer that that's what Christ was trying to tell everybody. So until next time, I'm done preaching at you all. I'll see you all next Sunday. Um, it's an honor to have you all here. It's an honor to know you all. If I don't come back next Sunday, then at least we had a good podcast today. So just try to remember as much as you can. As much as I have dealt with things in the supernatural and the paranormal and even the cryptid areas of my life, my whole life, the one thing I've learned is that there is ultimately a creator. Whether you call him Jesus, Christ, God, the creator is what I call him. My ancestors and my own family called him Tunkashila, grandfather, Wankantunka, the great unknown, the great spirit. He has many names. Just don't fall for the false god of this world. Don't let him end your cycle to seeing your Creator's face. Until next time, till next Sunday, I wish you all well, many blessings. Stay positive, stay focused, question everything. Blessings, everybody.
Through the mist we rise, a force unbroken, with banners high and hearts awoken. The sound of pipes, our war is calling. Like thunderous waves, our duty is falling. Stand tall, together we fight, with courage bound in every breath. We'll fight like lions, defy our death. In unity our hearts shall sing the legacy of warriors through every reign. With battle cries we forge our fate, in fields of valor we elevate. As shadows loom, our spirits flee. Brothers in arms, we are the tree. Fearless, we take the night, with courage bound in every breath. We'll fight like lions, defy our death. In unity, our hearts shall sing the legacy of warriors through every reign. As dawn breaks, we know our name.